Most gardeners ruin their compost every summer the same way. They leave it open, exposed, and overloaded with wet kitchen scraps, then act surprised when it turns into a slimy, foul-smelling mess. That sour odor isn't just unpleasant, it's a sign that your pile has gone anaerobic. Once oxygen disappears, beneficial microbes slow down, nutrients get locked up, and what should have become rich humus turns into a rotting sludge that attracts flies and repels worms. In hot weather, that breakdown happens fast. Summer doesn't destroy compost, poor structure does. Heat accelerates microbial activity, which is actually a good thing, but only if oxygen, carbon balance and moisture are controlled. An open pile in July or August receives direct sun, heavy irrigation runoff, surprise thunderstorms and constant additions of high-water scraps like melon rinds and tomato cores. Without protection and structure, that pile compacts under its own weight. Water fills air gaps, oxygen disappears, anaerobic bacteria take over. That's when the smell starts. Here's where most advice falls short. People will tell you to just turn it more often. Turning helps temporarily, but if the structure is wrong, you're just remixing a wet sponge. What fixes the issue is rebuilding the pile with intentional airflow and microbial dominance from the start. That's why I use a microbial compost booster whenever summer begins. It's not fertilizer, it's a concentrated blend of beneficial aerobic microbes that outcompete odor-producing organisms and accelerate proper decomposition. In a standard 3 by 3 foot backyard pile, I apply about 1 scoop per 2 to 3 cubic feet during layering. In raised beds where compost is built in place, I use about a tablespoon per square yard mixed into the upper layers. It stabilizes the pile quickly and prevents that sour fermentation that summer heat magnifies. The link is in the description for those who want to use the same system I do. Now let's talk about what actually causes the wet disaster effect. Open piles lose structure because gardeners underestimate how much water fresh scraps contain. Cucumber peels, lettuce cores, melon rinds, these are more than 90% water. When you stack them repeatedly without enough carbon-rich browns, the pile becomes saturated from the inside out. In summer heat, microbes consume oxygen rapidly. Without enough coarse carbon material to create air channels, the pile compacts and suffocates. The solution starts with carbon dominance. During summer, I run closer to a 3-to-1 brown-to-green ratio by volume instead of the typical 2-to-1. For every bucket of kitchen scraps, I add 3 buckets of shredded cardboard, dry leaves, or straw. The key is particle size. Large cardboard sheets don't work well, they mat together when wet. Shredded cardboard or torn egg cartons create airflow pockets. In raised beds, I'll lay down a 2-inch base of coarse browns before adding any greens. That base acts like a sponge and drainage layer at the same time. Moisture management becomes even more important in hot weather. Compost should feel like a wrung-out sponge, not a soaked towel. I check by grabbing a handful and squeezing firmly. If water drips, it's too wet. In that case, I immediately mix in dry browns and lightly turn only enough to distribute them. If the pile feels muddy rather than crumbly, it's already leaning anaerobic. Don't wait for smell to confirm it. Open piles also suffer from surface sealing. When rain hits an exposed compost mound, it compacts the outer layer into a crust. That crust prevents oxygen exchange. I prevent this by covering my summer piles with a breathable layer, usually straw, burlap, or a loose tarp raised slightly above the pile to allow airflow. Never seal compost airtight in summer. That guarantees odor. In small backyard gardens, this adjustment alone can save the entire season's compost output. A simple 3-sided wooden bin with a loose cover performs dramatically better than an uncovered mound. If you're working with limited space, even a wire cage lined with cardboard and topped with straw will outperform a fully exposed heap. Raised beds present a different challenge. Many gardeners trench compost directly into beds during summer, thinking it will break down quickly under the soil. But if the trench fills with wet scraps and minimal carbon, you've created an underground anaerobic pocket. Roots encountering that zone may stall or show nutrient stress. When I compost directly in raised beds during hot months, I mix greens with shredded browns in a separate container first, apply the microbial booster, and then bury the blend at least 6 inches deep with additional carbon mixed into the surrounding soil. Hydroponic systems using organic inputs face similar risks. Organic matter in media can ferment rapidly under warm conditions. If airflow around root zones decreases, you'll notice sour smells or slimy textures. I've corrected this by pre-composting organic materials with a high carbon ratio and microbial inoculation before introducing them into hydro systems. Stability before application is critical. Another summer issue is overwatering nearby plants. Irrigation runoff often drains into compost piles, especially if they sit at the lowest point in a yard. That extra water tips moisture levels past the safe threshold. Position your compost slightly elevated or shielded from direct irrigation spray. Compost is not a water catch basin. Let's address the myth that heat alone causes smell. Heat actually speeds up aerobic decomposition beautifully when oxygen is present. A well-built pile in summer can finish in 3 to 4 weeks. The disaster happens when moisture and nitrogen overwhelm structure. Oxygen is the dividing line between earthy and rotten. If you're rebuilding a pile that has already gone sour, don't discard it. Spread it out in a thin layer under shade for a day to let excess moisture evaporate. Then, rebuild with heavy browns at the base, remix thoroughly, and reintroduce microbial inoculant during layering. Within a week, odor should shift from sour to earthy. One more overlooked factor is pile size. Too small and it dries unevenly. Too large and it compacts under weight. I aim for roughly 3 feet wide by 3 feet tall. That size maintains heat, but allows manageable aeration. Anything taller than 4 feet in summer tends to compress unless heavily structured with coarse material. When compost smells bad in summer, it's rarely a mystery. It's almost always excess moisture, insufficient carbon, poor airflow, or weak microbial competition. Fix those 4 variables and summer becomes your fastest composting season instead of your worst. If you want compost that feeds raised beds consistently, supports microbial life in hydro systems, and produces dark, stable humus without attracting flies or producing odor, structure and biology must come first. Open piles fail in summer because they ignore both. If this breakdown helped you rethink how you're managing your summer compost, subscribe to Hydro Haven for more practical, field-tested methods that actually improve soil performance. Share this video with serious growers who are tired of smelly piles and inconsistent results. Strong soil systems build strong harvests, and once you master summer compost control, everything in your garden improves from the ground up.